It was one of those quiet Saturday mornings in a small town where everything moved just a bit slower. The sun had just started to warm up the streets, and the air still smelled like dew and fresh bread from the local bakery. Families were out early, taking walks, picking up groceries, or just enjoying the weekend. On the corner of Willow and Main, near the park with the big oak trees, a little girl named Emma was walking her German Shepherd, Max. Emma was about 7 years old, with curly brown hair and the kind of smile that made strangers wave as they passed by. She held Max's leash tightly but with a gentle hand, and Max, strong, alert yet calm, walked closely by her side. He didn't bark or pull. His eyes were always scanning, always focused. Most people thought he was just a well-trained dog. What they didn't know was that Max wasn't just any dog. He was a retired K9 service dog, trained to protect, to sense danger before anyone else, and to act in ways most people couldn't even imagine. Emma's father, Officer Daniels, had served on the force for over a decade. Max had been his partner for most of that time. After a bad injury forced the officer to step back from active duty, Max was officially retired and became a full-time family member. But the training never left him. Even in retirement, Max remained vigilant, especially around Emma. He had become her shadow, her silent guardian. As Emma and Max strolled toward the farmer's market, a low rumble echoed in the distance. A group of bikers rolled into town, their engines loud, their jackets worn and patched with different club logos. People turned to look, some with interest, others with unease. The bikers weren't necessarily bad news, but they were the kind who brought a certain energy wherever they went. Loud, carefree, and not always polite. Among them was a tall man with a shaved head and mirrored sunglasses, riding a black Harley. His name was Troy. He liked to be the center of attention. He wasn't mean, but he had a habit of pushing boundaries for laughs, often at the expense of others. That morning, he was in a particularly playful mood. As the group parked near the edge of the market, Troy noticed Emma and Max walking by. The girl smiled politely as they passed, and Max, ever watchful, made a quiet, subtle move to position himself between Emma and the row of bikes. That was when Troy got the idea. "Hey, watch this," he laughed to one of his buddies, pointing toward Max, "just messing around." He took a step forward and without warning extended his boot and nudged Max in the side. Not a hard kick, but enough to startle. Enough to make people look. He laughed, expecting the same from the others. But no one laughed. Max didn't yelp. He didn't bark. He just froze, his body suddenly stiff. His eyes locked onto Troy like something inside him had just switched on. The air changed. Emma gasped, looking up at Max, then at Troy, unsure what had just happened. The nearby fruit seller stopped stacking apples. A man pushing a stroller paused mid-step. For a moment, it was as if the entire market took a breath and held it. Troy raised his hands, grinning. "Relax, it was a joke," he said, chuckling to himself. "Didn't mean nothin'. But Max didn't relax. Emma, sensing something wrong, knelt down and placed her hand on Max's shoulder. "It's okay, boy. It's okay." Her voice was soft, but her eyes looked up at Troy with confusion. "Why would you do that?" Troy shrugged, still smiling, but a little less confidently now. "Just having a little fun, kid." From across the street, a familiar voice called out sharply, "Emma!" Officer Daniels had just stepped out of the hardware store. His voice was calm, but his eyes had already scanned the scene. He recognized the stance Max was in. It was the stance he had seen 100 times during their years on the job together. Alert, locked in, ready to defend. He crossed the street quickly, his face tense. "Max, heel." The dog responded instantly, stepping back toward Emma, but his eyes never left Troy. Troy raised an eyebrow, trying to downplay the moment. "Didn't know the dog was, whatever," he said, brushing invisible dust off his jacket. "He's not just a dog," Officer Daniels said quietly, his voice steady. "That's a K9 service dog. You just kicked a trained protector." Troy blinked, suddenly less sure of himself. Emma looked up at her father. He didn't know, Daddy. I know, sweetheart. Officer Daniels placed a gentle hand on her back. But Max did. He knows when something isn't right. And right now. He looked back at Troy, who had taken a small step backward. Max is telling me this isn't just a bad joke. The crowd that had silently gathered around the scene didn't speak. They just watched, waiting. Then, from behind the line of parked bikes, a faint sound broke the silence. Soft click. Something metallic. Officer Daniels turned slightly. His instincts kicking in. Max's ears perked. His body lowered into a subtle crouch. Troy, noticing the shift, glanced behind him. What the? Before anyone could say another word, Max stepped forward again, not in aggression, but in that purposeful way only trained K9s move, like he knew something no one else did. Emma held onto the leash tightly, but Max wasn't pulling. He was leading. Low. Measured. Focused. What's he doing? One of the other bikers asked, stepping away from his motorcycle. Officer Daniels didn't answer right away. He was looking beyond the bikes now, eyes narrowing at something or someone just out of view. Max's growl started low, almost a hum, not threatening but warning. And then, from around the corner of a nearby alley, a figure appeared. Dressed in dark clothing, with a black duffel bag slung over one shoulder. His eyes were scanning the area like he was looking for someone or something. Officer Daniels stepped in front of Emma. His voice low but firm. Get behind me. Max was already standing between them and the stranger. And just like that, the peaceful Saturday morning had shifted into something else entirely. Something no one was prepared for. The man with the duffel bag didn't stop walking. He moved slowly, casually, like someone who was trying hard not to draw attention, except he already had. His face was partly hidden under a black cap. His eyes shaded behind dark glasses, but there was something about the way he moved that made Officer Daniels stay alert. Max hadn't taken his eyes off him for even a second. The market, once filled with light chatter and weekend energy, had gone quiet. A few parents gently pulled their kids closer. A shopkeeper slowly stepped back into his store, pretending to arrange items by the window, but really watching every second unfold. Emma held onto her father's shirt now, her small fingers tightening as the man approached. Daddy. Why is Max growling like that? Officer Daniels didn't answer right away. His eyes were locked on the man, tracking his every movement. He recognized the signs, not from a police report or training manual, but from years in the field. There was a stillness in the man's body, not the calm kind, the calculated kind, the kind that came before something bad. Troy, the biker who had kicked Max earlier, looked around, confused. Is this guy with someone? Nobody answered. The man finally came to a stop just a few feet from the market entrance. He didn't speak, didn't look directly at anyone, just stood there, shifting the strap of the duffel bag on his shoulder, adjusting it like it was heavier than it should be. Max gave another low growl, his tail stiff, his ears high. Officer Daniels stepped forward slowly, trying not to cause panic but needing to get between this man and the rest of the people nearby. Morning, he said in a calm, even voice. Can I help you with something? The man didn't reply. His eyes flicked toward Max, then to Emma, then back to Daniels. You look a little lost, Daniels tried again, keeping his tone steady, non-threatening. You from around here? The man's lips parted just slightly. Just passing through, he said, voice low and gravelly. Daniels nodded, keeping his hands at his sides. You mind telling me what's in the bag? That made the man finally look him in the eye. Groceries, he said flatly. Emma tugged on her dad's arm. He didn't come from the store. I didn't see him buy anything. Officer Daniels didn't look away from the man. That's funny, he said gently. This bag doesn't look like it's got bread and apples in it. The man shifted his weight, and in that small movement, Max took 2 quick steps forward. Not lunging, not barking, just ready. The kind of readiness that comes from years of knowing exactly when to act. Daniels reached for the small radio clipped to his belt, but didn't raise it yet. He didn't want to escalate too fast. "I'm going to have to ask you to open the bag, sir." The man didn't move. His hand rested on the strap, his fingers twitching ever so slightly. A long second passed. "I said," Daniels began, but just then the man took a step back. Max barked once, loud and sharp. Everyone in the market jumped. Okay, the man said quickly, raising one hand in the air while the other still held the strap. "I don't want trouble." "You already brought it," Daniels muttered, now slowly raising his radio. "Unit 6. Need a code check near Willow and Main. Possible suspicious." But before he could finish, the man dropped the bag. It hit the ground with a heavy thud. Max lunged, placing himself directly between the bag and the people behind him. Daniels didn't even need to give a command. It was automatic. His partner, even in retirement, was doing exactly what he had been trained to do. The man stepped back again, both hands up now. "It's not what you think." "Then open it," Daniels said. But before the man could move, a shout came from across the street. "Hey!" A woman in jeans and a red flannel shirt came running from a small parking lot. "There you are. I told you not to walk off like that." The crowd turned. The man didn't react. The woman stopped beside him, breathing heavily like she'd been running for a while. "Sorry, he's not well," she said quickly to Officer Daniels. "He's been confused lately. He thinks people are after him. I just got him out of the hospital last week." Daniels blinked. "Is that true?" The man said nothing. The woman stepped in front of him and gently touched his arm. "Come on, let's go home. You forgot your meds again, didn't you?" The man looked at her but didn't say anything. For the first time he seemed uncertain. Slower. Almost lost. Emma leaned toward her dad. "What's happening?" "I don't know yet," Daniels said quietly. The woman bent down and picked up the duffel bag. It was heavier than she expected, and she nearly dropped it. Daniels moved toward her. "I'm going to have to see what's inside that bag, ma'am." She froze, then smiled faintly. "Of course. You're just doing your job." She unzipped the bag slowly, pulling it open. Daniels peered in, his eyes narrowing. Inside were several thick books, a folded jacket, and a few bottles of medicine. Nothing dangerous, nothing illegal. But something didn't sit right. Max was still tense. His body hadn't relaxed, and Daniels knew his dog well enough to trust him more than what his eyes were telling him. The woman looked up. "See, it's just a mix-up." Daniels nodded slowly but didn't move away. "What hospital was he released from?" "Excuse me. You said you just got him out of the hospital last week." "Which one?" She hesitated, then gave a name. Daniels kept his expression calm. "That place closed 2 years ago." Her smile faded. Max gave a single bark. And just like that, the woman dropped the bag again and grabbed the man's arm. "We have to go," she whispered. "Now." But Max stepped in their path before they could move. The crowd behind Daniels stepped back again. Troy, who had been silent the whole time now, muttered under his breath. "Okay, this just got weird." Daniels raised his radio again. "Unit 6, request backup immediately. 2 suspicious individuals, possibly carrying false medical claims. Repeat, backup needed." The woman glanced around, eyes darting. The man still hadn't spoken. He stared at Max like he'd seen him before, like he recognized him. And then quietly he said, "You were in Denver." Daniels turned sharply. "What did you say?" The man took a small step forward. "You and the dog. I saw you in Denver. 5 years ago. You busted that guy in the warehouse." Daniels went cold. His mind raced. That case had never made the news. It was a sealed file. The suspect had vanished before trial. "Who are you?" he asked. The man didn't answer. Max growled again, louder this time. Emma looked up at her dad. her voice barely above a whisper. "Why does he know about you?" Officer Daniels stared at the man. At the woman who now looked pale and nervous. Something much bigger was going on here. And somehow Max had known it from the beginning. The silence after the man's words felt heavier than anything in the duffel bag. Officer Daniels didn't speak, didn't move. His thoughts were racing. That case in Denver. How could this man know? It was one of the most sensitive operations he and Max had ever been part of. A sting that went sideways. A suspect who disappeared. Only a few people had the full report, and even fewer knew what had really happened inside that warehouse. Max took another step forward, nose slightly lifted, like he was trying to read something invisible in the air. Daniels saw the change. That small motion meant something. It always did. The man wasn't just someone passing through. He wasn't confused or lost. And now the woman beside him was shifting uncomfortably. Her hand still clutching the bag she just dropped a minute ago. Daniels could feel it in his gut. There was more to both of them. "I think we should go now," the woman said softly, tugging the man's sleeve again. But the man didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on Max. "You were in the back," he said quietly, almost like he was remembering something from a dream. "I was hiding behind the crates. You walked right past me. The dog stopped, but you didn't see me." Daniels felt a chill run down his spine. "Why were you there?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he turned to the woman and whispered something. She looked at him wide-eyed, shaking her head. Whatever he said, it changed her completely. Her expression turned from nervous to frightened. She started backing away slowly, like she was ready to bolt. Troy, who had been watching the entire scene from behind the other bikers, took a cautious step forward. "Hey man, what's all this about? You people hiding something?" Daniels raised a hand to keep him back. "Stay out of it. This isn't your concern." But it was too late. Troy's voice had drawn attention again. A few more people were watching now. People with phones, others whispering. The moment was growing, twisting into something harder to contain. Emma leaned closer to her father. "What happened in Denver?" she asked. Daniels didn't answer. He couldn't. Not yet. Meanwhile, the man finally blinked and looked away from Max. "I wasn't supposed to be there," he said. "I was just helping move some boxes. I didn't know who those people really were until it was too late." Daniels took a step forward, keeping his voice calm. "If you were just helping, then why did you run?" The man swallowed hard. "Because they told me if I talked, they'd find me. And they did. 2 months later. Thought I got away. But then someone showed up." The woman grabbed his arm again. "Stop talking," she hissed. "They'll hear you." "They already are," Daniels replied. Across the street, the sound of a police siren faintly echoed through the air. Backup was coming, but slow. They'd have to stall until help arrived. He glanced at Max, who hadn't moved an inch. Still on full alert. Troy shook his head. "You know, I thought this was just a kid walking her dog. Then a guy shows up with a weird bag, starts acting shady. And now we're talking about Denver warehouses and people being hunted." "Why don't you ride out of here, Troy?" Daniels said without looking at him. "I didn't sign up for this," Troy muttered, stepping back, suddenly unsure of his earlier smugness. His friends, the other bikers, were already inching toward their bikes. The woman's eyes darted from face to face. "This was a mistake," she said. "We shouldn't have come here. I told you it wasn't safe anymore." "I didn't come here for them," the man said. "I came for the dog." That hit Daniels like a punch to the chest. "What did you say?" The man looked at Max again. "He saved me once. You didn't see me, but he did. He could have exposed me right then. But he didn't. He just looked at me. It's like he knew I wasn't part of what was happening. After that night I disappeared. Changed my name. She helped me stay hidden." The woman looked away, clearly torn between fear and guilt. "But something happened last week," the man continued. "A guy showed up near our apartment. Same face from the warehouse. He didn't say anything. just smiled at me. That was enough. Daniels was trying to stay calm, but his heart was thumping now. He didn't like where this was going. You think someone from that crew tracked you down? The man nodded. And I think they followed us here. Emma gripped her father's arm. Are we in danger? Daniels bent down. No, baby. You're safe with me. Always. But even as he said the words, a tight feeling in his chest told him otherwise. The strange behavior, the bag, the unfinished story from 5 years ago. Something wasn't over. And now Max, who had never failed him, was acting like the threat wasn't behind them. But still coming. Suddenly, a voice crackled from Daniels's radio. Unit 6, approaching location. 2 minutes. Daniels responded quickly. Copy. Suspects are cooperative for now. Situation tense. Proceed with caution. He looked at the woman and the man again. You two are not leaving. Not until we get the full story. And I promise you, if there's still a threat, if someone followed you here, we'll find them. The man nodded, but the woman looked past Daniels, her expression suddenly frozen. Her hand rose slowly, pointing toward the alley behind the bakery. There, she whispered. He's here. Daniels turned, and Max instantly snapped to attention. His body low, ears high, a low rumble in his throat. A figure stepped just slightly into view. Far away, half hidden in the shadows between 2 buildings. He wasn't doing anything. Just standing. Watching. Max took a single step forward, body stiff. Daniels squinted at the man in the shadows. He couldn't see the face, but the posture, the stillness, the way he seemed to melt into the background. It wasn't normal. He reached for his radio again. We've got eyes on another individual. Unknown intentions. Stay sharp. The man with the duffel bag was shaking now. That's him. The one from Denver. I don't know how he found me here. But he's not here for a talk. Daniels stood straight, heart pounding. And the figure in the alley didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't smile. He just watched, like he was waiting for something. Or someone. Max's growl deepened. A sound so low it seemed to rise from the ground itself. Every hair on his back stood up. Officer Daniels didn't need a command. His partner had already made the call. There was danger, real and close. The man in the alley stayed perfectly still, almost as if he was waiting for something to happen first. His face was hidden under a hoodie, hands tucked into his jacket pockets. But there was something unnerving about his presence. Calm, focused, and completely unfazed by the people starting to notice him. Daniels stepped forward, slowly placing himself between the alley and the others behind him. Sir, he called out, keeping his voice steady. This is a public area. I need you to come out where I can see your hands. The man didn't move. Not even a flinch. Sir, Daniels repeated, his hand now close to the radio. I won't ask again. Max's posture changed. His body leaned forward, ready to launch. Daniels saw it in his eyes. He was prepared for anything. From behind, the woman's voice shook. That's him. That's the one who followed us. He stood outside our building for 2 nights in a row. Never knocked. Never spoke. Just watched. The man with her finally found his voice again. He worked for them back in Denver. He wasn't supposed to be there either. But when everything went down, he vanished. Daniels didn't take his eyes off the figure. Do you know his name? The man shook his head. No, nobody did. They just called him the Quiet One. He never talked, but when something had to be done, he did it. Daniel's stomach turned. The biker, Troy, whispered to his buddies. This is getting way too real. The tension in the air was thick now. The breeze stopped. Even the birds above had gone quiet. Then finally, the man in the alley took one slow step forward. Daniels raised his hand. That's close enough. Still no words. No gestures. Just that unreadable stare from under the hood. Max gave a sharp bark, loud enough to make Emma jump. That's when Daniels noticed something odd. There was no fear in the figure's eyes. No panic, no hesitation. It was like everything was going according to some plan. He was baiting them, testing reactions, watching every move. Behind him, the backup units were still a minute out. Too far. Too slow. Daniels narrowed his eyes. What do you want? No reply. The man with the duffel bag stepped forward suddenly. His voice shaky but loud. Why are you here? After all this time. We didn't say anything. We didn't tell anyone. Still no reply. But the man in the alley did something then. Just one small action that turned everyone cold. He smiled. Not a wide smile. Just a faint, knowing curve of the lips. Like a secret had just been confirmed. Like he had seen what he came to see. Daniels raised his radio. Unit 6, suspect is not complying. Visibly threatening behavior. Request immediate tactical support. The man took another step forward. Stay where you are, Daniels shouted. But the smile didn't fade. Then, in a sudden motion, he turned and walked back into the alley, disappearing into the shadows as quickly as he'd appeared. Max barked again, trying to go after him, but Daniels held him back. The woman looked like she was going to faint. He's not running. He's circling. Daniels spun around. What? The man beside her spoke quickly, voice rising. That's what they did before. Back in Denver. They never just attacked. They made you feel safe. Like it was over. And then they came from somewhere else. Somewhere you didn't expect. Daniels felt his grip tighten on Max's leash. The crowd nearby had started to panic now, though most still didn't know why. Phones were out. People were whispering. A few shop owners were trying to close early, sensing something was off. Something dangerous. Emma pulled at her dad's sleeve. Where did he go? Is he coming back? Daniels didn't answer. He looked down the alley, then scanned the rooftops, the parked cars, the empty delivery truck across the street. Too many places to hide. Too many blind spots. Then Max barked again, this time toward the left, down the road. Daniels followed his gaze. Another figure. A different one. This one stood at the edge of a parking lot, across from the playground. Just standing. Watching. Not moving. Daniels felt a chill deep in his chest. There's more than one, he muttered. The man from the duffel bag swallowed hard. They don't work alone. They watch from different angles. One distracts, the others wait. Max growled louder. Daniels keyed his radio again. We have multiple unidentified individuals positioned in the area. Possible coordinated movement. Crowd needs to be cleared. Repeat, clear the area. But the people weren't moving fast enough. Some were frozen, some just curious, unaware of how serious things had become. Then came the moment Daniels had feared. A loud bang. Not a gunshot, but something falling metal against pavement. From the alley behind the bakery. Max barked again. Troy ducked instinctively. What was that? Daniels turned fast, hand on his utility belt. Emma, stay close. More movement in the shadows now. Not clear. Just flashes. Japes. He couldn't see how many. Couldn't tell who was a threat and who was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. The woman clutched the man's arm again. They're boxing us in. Daniels took a breath, trying to calm the storm building inside his chest. Max pulled at the leash. He wanted to move. Daniels loosened his grip just a little. Easy, buddy. Not yet. Every instinct screamed to act. To run. Fight. But nothing was clear. The figures hadn't attacked. They hadn't spoken. They were just there watching. Surrounding. And Daniels knew deep in his bones that something bigger was coming. Something that went far beyond what happened in Denver. This wasn't just about one man running from his past. It was about something unfinished. Something coming back. The kind of thing that didn't end quietly. Max growled again. And from behind the alley, footsteps began to echo. Low. Purposeful. Closer. And closer. The footsteps from the alley grew louder, each one tapping against the pavement like a slow drumbeat in a horror movie. Daniels could hear his own heartbeat in his ears, matching the rhythm. Max stood frozen, body trembling with tension, waiting for the signal. Then, just as the source of the sound was about to emerge from the alley's mouth, silence. Everything stopped. The sound, the motion, even the air felt still. Daniels held his breath. But when the figure finally stepped into view, it wasn't who anyone expected. A young boy, no older than 10, with wide brown eyes and messy hair, came out of the shadows. His arms were up like he'd seen it done in movies. His face was pale and he was breathing fast. Max instantly stopped growling. His body softened. The boy looked terrified, scanning everyone around him until his eyes landed on the man with the duffel bag. "Dad!" The woman gasped and ran forward, pulling the boy into her arms. "Leo, what are you doing here?" "I followed you," he cried. "I thought you forgot me." The man dropped to his knees. "Leo, no, we didn't forget you. We were just trying to keep you safe." Daniels blinked, trying to process it all. "You have a kid." The man looked up, shame all over his face. "We didn't mean to bring him into this. We told him to stay with her sister back home. We thought we could end this quietly." Daniels looked down at Max, who had already relaxed near the boy. The German shepherd sat close, nudging the child gently, protective in an instant. That was the kind of dog Max was. A true canine service dog, trained not just to detect threats, but to know when someone needed to feel safe. But that moment of tenderness didn't last long, because a voice came from behind them, cold and clear. "Touching reunion." "Really?" Everyone turned fast. Standing across the street now, not in the alley or the parking lot, was a woman. Her coat was long dark gray, and her hair tied back in a tight braid. She held a phone in one hand, and a small earpiece gleamed in the other. And she was smiling. Daniels narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" "You can call me Claire," she said. "I'm the one who's been cleaning up the mess left in Denver." The man with the duffel bag froze. Claire continued walking forward, calm as ever. "We never planned on leaving loose ends. But it turns out, one of our little secrets had a wife and a son. And an impressive skill for hiding." She looked at Max, and a very loyal dog to protect them. Daniels stepped between her and the family. "You're part of it." She raised an eyebrow. "Part of what?" "The Denver operation." "Oh." "I'm the one sent afterward. The one who makes things disappear quietly. Without sirens. Without reports." Emma was holding tightly to Max's fur now. Her eyes locked on the woman. Claire saw her and smirked. Cute kid. Shame she had to see this. "Stop talking," Daniel said, voice firm now. But Claire wasn't the type to stop. She seemed to enjoy the tension. "Here's the thing," she said, stepping just a little closer. "You can call your friends, the backup, the uniforms. But you're already surrounded. And we only need one thing, the bag." All eyes turned to the duffel bag, still slouched on the ground. Daniels realized then. No one had actually opened it. No one knew what was inside. "What's in the bag?" he asked slowly. The man hesitated. The woman nodded to him. "Tell him." He knelt beside it and slowly unzipped it halfway, revealing something that looked like a small, reinforced metal box with biometric locks and a blinking light. "It's not drugs," he said. "It's not money." Daniels stepped closer. "It's evidence," the man said. "Digital files. Transactions. Proof of everything they did in Denver and after. It's what they killed for. What they're still trying to hide." Claire's tone turned sharp. "And it's stolen government property. Which means if you hand it over to the wrong person, you'll be part of something far more dangerous than a biker kicking a service dog." Daniels ignored her. "Why bring it here?" The man looked at his son. "Because I didn't want to run anymore. And because of Max. He found me once. I thought, maybe he could help protect us again." Daniels looked down at Max. The dog wasn't growling anymore. He was watching Claire, calm but alert, like he was waiting for Daniels to decide what happened next. More voices came from the side streets now. A step. Claire's people, no doubt. Daniels could feel the noose tightening around them. Claire tilted her head. You don't want this to end ugly. Give me the bag, let them walk, and you'll never hear about any of this again. Daniels stayed quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up the bag carefully and held it close. I think I'll wait for my team. Claire's smile vanished. And for the first time, Daniel saw her true face. Not the calm, confident professional, but someone who wasn't used to being told no. Have it your way, she said, stepping back. Then she lifted the phone to her ear. Daniels knew what that meant. Had begun. Whatever happened next, there was no more avoiding it. No more time to talk or delay. And through all of it, Max stood ready. Loyal. Focused. Unmoving. Because the real story that had started with a biker kicking a little girl's German shepherd was about to explode into something none of them were ready for. Max didn't flinch when the van pulled up fast from the far end of the street. It was matte black with no markings. Too clean for a delivery vehicle, too quiet to be ordinary. Daniels tightened his grip on the duffel bag and stepped back toward the family, shielding them with his body. Emma clung to his side, her small hands curled into his jacket. Max shifted forward, stance locked, eyes pinned on the approaching threat. The doors of the van flew open. Two figures jumped out, dressed in dark tactical gear, but they weren't police. Daniels knew that uniform. Private. Unofficial. Contractors. The kind who didn't file reports or wear badges. Claire smiled again, like she had been waiting for the show to begin. Daniels spoke into his radio, voice firm. Code red. Immediate support. Armed threat. Location locked. No answer. Claire's smirk widened. We've already scrambled the channel. You're not calling anyone. Max growled, the sound low and steady. One of the contractors raised a hand. Just the bag. Walk away and no one gets hurt. Daniels looked at the family behind him. Exhausted, terrified, but holding on. Then at Emma, who didn't fully understand what was happening but knew something was very wrong. Then at Max. The dog's eyes met his, steady and unwavering. Daniels took one breath and whispered, "Protect." Max launched forward without hesitation. The first man didn't even see him coming. Max struck his chest hard, knocking him off balance. Before the second could raise his arm, Daniels threw the duffel behind him toward the man and woman, yelling, "Run!" The woman grabbed it, pulling Leo close as they darted down the alley. Claire's voice rose above the chaos. "Do not let them escape." The second contractor pulled out a device. Small like a remote. He pressed it, and a shrill alarm echoed through the street. From rooftops and parked cars, more of Claire's people emerged. Daniels counted at least 6. He stepped in front of Emma, shielding her. "Stay behind me." Max fought like he'd been waiting for this moment his whole life. He dodged, lunged, barked warnings, keeping the attackers distracted long enough for the family to disappear around the corner. Claire lost her cool. "Take him down. Get that dog off the field." Daniels moved fast, reaching into his jacket and pulling out a small, concealed flash device, a leftover from his training days. He clicked the top, waited 2 seconds, and dropped it to the pavement. The bright flash stunned half the street. Shouts echoed. Max ducked instinctively. Daniels pulled Emma close, covering her eyes. When the light faded, the street was chaos. 2 men were down, Claire was coughing from behind a car, and Daniels was already moving. He ran after the family, Max close behind, navigating alleys and empty lots, weaving through shadows until they finally stopped near an abandoned train car at the edge of a construction zone. The man was there, holding the bag, panting. "They're still coming." Daniels nodded. "You have a car. We parked 2 blocks north. Back road. Go. I'll cover you." But just as they were about to split, Emma tugged at Daniel's hand and pointed. "There's someone else." Out from behind a pile of crates stepped a figure none of them expected. The biker. Roy. He held up both hands and said, "Hey, relax. I followed you because I saw what was happening. I messed up, man. Back at the park. That dog, he's something else. I didn't know. Daniels narrowed his eyes. What do you want? Troy shook his head. To help. Look, I used to run with some guys who knew how to disappear. They owed me favors. I can get these people out. The man and woman hesitated. But Daniels gave a slow nod. If you're lying. I'm not, Troy said. I've done a lot of dumb things. Let me make one right. Daniels turned to Max. The dog sniffed Troy, then looked at Daniels. No growl. Just alert. That was enough. Go with them, Daniels said. I'll throw them off your trail. Troy grabbed the bag, nodded to the family. Come on. This way. They vanished down the side path, toward the hidden road. Daniels turned back the way they came, ready to face whoever was still chasing. Claire appeared minutes later, furious, flanked by the remaining agents. Where are they? Daniels held up his hands. Gone. She stepped closer. You think this ends here? No, he said. But it ends for you. And then came the final twist. Sirens. From every direction. Marked cruisers. Helicopters overhead. And behind Claire, in the shadows, uniformed officers stepped into view. Daniels smiled. Radio channel wasn't dead. It was rerouted. You were never jamming us. You were just broadcasting your position. Claire turned slowly, realizing she'd walked right into a trap. The officers stepped forward. Drop your weapons. Her team froze, unsure what to do. Daniels kept his eyes on her. You're not walking away this time. She stared him down, then finally dropped the earpiece. And as the officers moved in to arrest her, Max sat beside Daniels, calm again. Everything felt still, but the weight of what had just happened hung in the air. Later, as the sun began to rise, Daniels sat on the curb with Emma, sipping a cold bottle of water. Max lay by his feet, tired but alert. Emma leaned against his shoulder. Did we win? Daniels looked out at the quiet street. We protected who needed protecting. That's a win. But deep inside he knew something. This story might be over. But the people behind it, they weren't finished yet. And Max would be ready. A week later, the sun shone softer over the quiet town. It was one of those mornings that felt fresh, like the world had exhaled after holding its breath for too long. Daniels stood outside the station, sipping his coffee while Max sat beside him, tail gently brushing the pavement. People passing by smiled at the dog. Some even stopped to give a soft pat. They didn't know the full story. They didn't know how close everything had come to unraveling. But that was okay. That wasn't why Max was trained. His job was never about credit. It was about purpose. The biker, Troy, had kept his word. He helped the family disappear, with new names and a clean slate far from the eyes of those who once hunted them. Daniels had gotten word a few days ago. The man, his wife, and their son Leo were settling into a small coastal town, surrounded by good people. The duffel bag and what it contained was now in the hands of a federal team, trusted agents who would use the evidence to take down the remains of the Denver operation. Slowly, carefully, the truth was surfacing. Claire, once untouchable, was now sitting in a holding facility. She'd lawyered up, of course, and she was already spinning a web of denials and technicalities. But Daniels wasn't worried. The evidence spoke louder than she ever could. And there were more people coming forward, witnesses who had been silent out of fear. Now, with her taken down, their voices were starting to rise. Emma had been quieter since that night, holding Max a little tighter during walks, asking more questions than before. Her innocence had been shaken, just a little, and Daniels felt the weight of that. He tried his best to keep things normal. School lunches, bedtime stories, weekend walks, but he could see it in her eyes. She understood now, even if she didn't have all the words for it. The world wasn't always safe, but Max would always be there. People at the park had started treating Max differently too. The same dog who'd once been kicked for no reason now walked with silent respect around him. Some remembered the day of the incident, How it had all started with a joke that went too far. A biker who thought it was funny to kick a little girl's German shepherd, not knowing it was a trained K9 service dog. No one laughed now. That moment had spiraled into something much bigger, a reminder that even the smallest actions could lead to massive consequences. Daniels had replayed it in his mind more than once. If Max hadn't been there, if that moment hadn't happened, would they have ever uncovered the truth? Would the family still be on the run? Would Claire still be out there, cleaning up secrets with a cold smile and a quiet voice? One morning, Troy showed up outside the station. His bike looked cleaner, like he'd taken time to wipe away the dirt of his past. He pulled off his helmet and offered a slow nod. "I'm not proud of who I was," he said, voice low. "But I wanted to thank you for not writing me off." Daniels looked at Max, who stared at Troy, calm as ever. "You did the right thing when it mattered," Daniels replied. "That counts." Troy reached into his pocket and pulled out a dog tag, worn and scratched. "Had a mutt once," he said. "Not trained like Max. Just a street dog that stuck with me through some tough years. Lost him when I got too selfish. Never forgave myself." He handed the tag to Daniels. "Give this to Max. He's more than a dog." Daniels nodded, taking the small piece of metal and reading the faded engraving. It said one word: loyal. That night, Daniels placed the tag on Max's collar, just below the official K9 ID. Max didn't seem to notice, but when Emma saw it, she smiled and whispered, "Perfect." The town slowly returned to its routine. The park filled with kids again. The bakery reopened after repairs. And people stopped whispering about the incident when they saw Max. Now they talked about him with pride. He'd become a quiet hero. No medals, no headlines, just steady paws and watchful eyes. As for Daniels, he began training new recruits at the academy. He told them stories, not just about tactics or procedures, but about trust. About how a moment in the park could turn into something bigger. About how a dog like Max wasn't just a tool but a partner, a guardian. The final report was filed, the case officially closed, and life moved on. But late at night, when the house was quiet and Emma was asleep, Daniels would sometimes sit on the porch with Max at his feet, watching the stars. He'd think about all the pieces that had come together, the family, the files, Claire, Troy. How it all started with one careless act. He knew he'd never forget it. And maybe that was the point. Not every story ends with a perfect bow. But the important ones, the real ones, leave something behind. Lesson. Change. A reminder that even when darkness creeps in, light can still find its way through. Especially when you've got a partner like Max. A German shepherd once kicked in a joke. Who turned out to be a silent protector, a fierce friend, and the kind of hero you never see coming. And from that day forward, no one ever underestimated him again.